and welcome to Hello Player, a show for curious people who want an honest look at making a video game. I'm your host, Ava Carr, and we're back together for a 3-part special of Hello Player Season 1, where we're going to take a deep dive into the parts that no one ever talks about, which is what happens after a game launches. So today, Charles and I will be chatting a little bit about what we've been calling the gray area, which is a space when tensions can run a little high and also things that were mapped out on agreements don't go quite as planned. If you're into what we're doing here, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our channel below. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Hi, Charles.
Yo.
So the gray area.
Yeah.
Have you been looking forward to this episode?
Oh yeah, I've had it on my calendar, looked at it. It's just, this is the one that I want to talk about.
I'm so excited about this episode.
Nope. Yeah, you didn't mention tension at all in the intro.
I feel like every time there is any tension, at least you and I can talk about it. And
yeah, the parts where we are not necessarily clear on what we should be what is going on / there might be some miscommunication things going on, and that's largely where the gray area stuff resides.
I think for us it was especially in the agreement, we mapped it out as much as we could, but I mean, you can only plan so far ahead when you don't know what you're doing exactly.
Yeah.
Right? It was the first time that we were publishing on multiple platforms, and it was our first time working on the console side of things as well, but we had the right things in place. But we, our relationship this was new. Our agreement probably didn't get everything, but it got a good chunk of it.
Yeah, and just to preface all of this, it wasn't we have a huge falling out and we are begrudgingly doing
Clearly,
this
we have not had
series.
a huge falling out.
Yeah, we're not oh man, now we have to talk about this, as it tends to happen inside of business agreements and things like that. You can't account for everything. Some things that are surprises occur. Sometimes you might think you're on the same page, but then you're not, and stuff like that, which is it's a natural occurrence, but you try to trim that down. I
loved over the summer how we started talking about this, by the way. I feel like we need to tell folks, set the scene. What on earth actually happened this summer where we started talking about the gray area and why we even started saying the gray area, which was so much was going on, right? COVID had hit. There was just so much going on in the world. We were at the space where we were oh, the game shipped.
Yeah.
And it's hard to talk right now. And I remember having, a lot of calls with you and just being I can't tell if I'm confused about the world. I can't tell if I'm confused about us at the moment. I can't tell if it's just that. And those calls were really challenging.
I remember when COVID hit, it was very much we no longer are we're sitting in the same area,
especially after being in that space or being in the same office. I mean, you were there from day one when we basically moved in, which was 5 years ago. And although at the time it wasn't, every single day, it became every single day when we decided to start, working on Hyperdot together.
Exactly. Yeah. And also there were times where I wasn't there because I had school.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But every single holiday you were there.
I was there, yeah.
Working on something, So that had happened, and we were no longer in the same office, and we were primarily just doing calls. The world was on fire. Hyperdot had just launched. I mean,
yeah. There were anything that wasn't, oh yeah, we're crystal clear on things, became more of a point of contention because it just felt oh yeah, we have to deal with literally everything.
Yeah,
on top of now we have to figure out what exactly we all mean. Just trying to navigate that stuff was a lot harder because of we had the world going on.
And like we do, we set up some rules for ourselves how we handle this like tension and I'd say like some points of tension and some points of conflict. We both basically almost like a feature list made, here are the things that we want to talk about, and then we revised it together and prioritized everything.
Yep. Yeah.
We literally went like all producer on this. And then we were like, okay, which one is like this? Is this one yours? Is this something that you really want to talk about? So if it's yours, then, you know, the other person needs to listen and ask questions and be understanding. And then we had like all of our boundaries set up, and it was kind of magical, but also like looking back on it, it's magical. But I remember very clearly when we set those up, it was scary to do that because there was just tension in certain areas. And I don't think we really knew what they were until we knew when we expressed what they were and just like put them all down on Discord. When we put it all down, it was clear at one point when you and I both said like, oh, looking at this, like, this feels manageable. Like we can do this.
This is not nearly as like scary as I thought it would be, largely because just like the act of writing it down and being like, oh yeah, here are the things that are actually the things that we should talk about and like clarify. And of course, it's going to be hard to talk about all of those things.
Yeah, and there are, of course, like feelings that are involved in that too, right? Because we're not robots. Like we run companies, but we're not robots. And after we had made that list, each week we would just check in on each other and be like, hey, do we want to tackle this next one? Like, are you in a good enough space? Like, do you feel comfortable tackling this today? And half the time we were like, no. We're just going to talk about what we're playing, how life is, how our families are, and not talk about those items on that list because it was going to be too hard or too scary during that week when the world is on fire. And like looking back on it, I am so proud of us. I don't know how we like both got to a place where we're like, here's our list of things that we need to talk about like adults. Can we set up our boundaries? And after we set up our boundaries, can we like check in with each other to see if we actually want to talk about them this week? I'm really proud of us. So
that was awesome. And I really do appreciate the fact that we both were able to do that and go through that. One of the biggest components of the gray area was largely just like some things that happened during the publishing that were unexpected, not negative, just unexpected, which then made publishing like
easy.
It made publishing really easy.
No, I said hazy, not easy. Hazy.
Yes, it's so easy.
No.
Hazy. Okay. It just it made it really hazy. It made it so that it was harder to be like, well, because these things happened, well, what happens now? Because we had original goals and stuff.
Just to share with everyone, you know, when you're at the end of a development cycle or running towards the end of a development cycle, getting ready to ship, everything is a blur. And it also feels like the world is ending because there's a deadline and the dates are announced and people know it's coming and players are expecting it. And you don't want to disappoint your players and the people who are expecting your game to come out. And so I think, you know, during all of that time when we were kind of coming to the end of the development towards shipping, we never had a moment to truly pause. Like even like in beta, like mid to late beta going into shipping, like we just never had time that we were like, we need to pause for a second because this doesn't look like our agreement. And what that means is that we had initially intended to support Hyperdot on 3 platforms. One was on PC, one was on console, and another on mobile. And the console release in particular, like, you know, PC's fine, everything's fine over there, but on console in particular, Charles had dreams about very specific way, like a very specific way in which which platforms were which platforms Hyperdot was going to come out on and when and how. My flexibility on this one was like, who's gonna pay us?
Yeah.
That was a big question mark, was like, who's the right partner for us? Who's also going to make sure that they're like the game is seen by a lot of folks, and who's also going to pay us for our time in doing this work. At the end of the day, you still really wanted, let's just say, like, all platforms. Like, you wanted it to come out on all platforms, at least on console, and that's just not how it turned out. And that's not what it kind of looked like. So since we were working towards initially launching on a different platform, and then something cool and great happened with our friends over at Xbox, it was kind of like a shift in our perspective. And we never actually talked about that after it happened. We just celebrated it, and we were like, this is a huge win. We're really excited. We found a partner that's right for us, which then I think led to, again, some gray areas around platform support and how we were going to support you and Hyperdot through other platforms. Because, again, the idea was, PC was primarily, Steam and itch.io, and it was going to be one console. We were going to make sure that we paid for one console port, and did, localization and everything, that, like, storefronts, etc., for that one console. And you had a very specific idea about what that one console might have been, or what it could have been, even before we got into those agreements. And then and mobile. And it wasn't that.
When, like, the shift happened over to Xbox, it wasn't like, oh man, we should really talk about the agreement and stuff. It was totally like, oh man, this is a great, yeah, this is dope. This is an amazing opportunity for us to be able to work with the awesome folks at Xbox. But yeah, that was not a thing that was something that immediately at the time we were trying to allocate resources to be like, okay, hold on, let's take a step back and look at the agreement, largely because it was all right, let's go, and try and like get this to work and whatnot, and make that shift. So it became something in not the back burner, but like something where it wasn't in the forefront. And then the longer that happened, the harder it was to, like, oh wait, well, if we do actually think about this, well, what does this mean for future platforms and stuff? Like, what does this mean to try and release on other platforms? And then where does, like, glitch slot into that? Or like, am I doing this alone as Tribe Games then?
On other console platforms, or on any other platform in general, like, are you doing that solo? Is that something that you want us to be a part of? Should you work with someone else? And I hear you on that, and that was a lot of the conversation.
And that's where I, like, really do feel like those summer sessions that we had, where we were just talking about it at our own pace and trying to navigate that kind of stuff. It was super nice to go through and actually say, hey, like, this gray area here of, like, oh, what does this mean? Like, what do other consoles mean, and how does that work out? That was really nice to go through and actually, like, clarify that kind of stuff, because it's just been on the back of my mind for a while, but then it became a bigger deal as after release, because then I released it on the console. I'm like, all right, cool. Oh wait, now what? It was really nice to be able to go through that.
And I'm also, as we're talking, I'm recognizing that, it was a big milestone that, we signed our agreement, what was it, like 3 years, 2.5 years before launch? And we had never revisited it until that date. And what we said, even when we were going into this, was like, this is a living agreement. We will check in with each other. We will talk with each other. But that was a long time before we actually did that. So coming back to it, I'm really thankful that we got a chance to take that time and got a chance to talk about, what does it look like on other platforms, when initially it was the 3, and how how do we move forward? Do we move forward together? Do we move forward differently than how we are currently operating? And I think, goals and needs also change over time with you at Tribe and also us at Glitch. There are very few people that I feel very comfortable like having a very like straightforward conflict resolution thing with, and thank you for doing that with me. It was I was going to say it was fun, but it wasn't. Like it was just nice to be able to talk about it openly with you and to get through that hurdle with you, because when you had initially even said well, what's our goal in talking about this? What is our goal? And I said, to be able to feel comfortable talking to you again, and to be able to feel comfortable and to be able to be back to where we were with our friendship in a way, because the world happened, a move out happened, the game launched, and everything was just all over the place.
Exactly.
Which I suppose leads me to the next big gray area. I had been talking to my co-founder and Charles, you, myself, and Nicholas have truly been working together for a really, really long time.
Yeah.
Like a really long time.
Yeah.
And I think the intense time meaning like every day, like full-time work every day around each other for that like 2.5 years, it was very clear to me that we just got along. And we enjoyed working with each other.
We worked really well together throughout all that. And we've done a whole bunch of projects and collaborated and stuff.
Something that listeners and viewers don't know is that the other big gray area that was happening during this time was that I had conversations with Charles about like, where do we go next? And this like was before summer, but we had put on the table just to be like, hey, Charles, like post Hyperdot, I think there are two ways in which like Glitch is going to go. It's either we're going to continue funding even more titles, at least for the next couple of years, or we can dive in and build a studio. And the offer that was really on the table was thinking about doing co-ownership on Glitch together. And there was a whole conversation or a series of conversations that were had about like, oh, did you want to continue moving forward with Tribe as like your solo thing? Where is the direction that I really want to take Glitch as a company? That was a thing. And that was a big, big thing, because I don't do that. like we were that close. So that was another big gray area, which was ownership. And now that our thing that we worked on together is out into the world, what happens after here with the publishing, but also what happens with us, whether it's as individual companies continuing to move forward together, or some way in terms of like ownership together.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of that, the gray area there was like, oh man, well, what does this actually mean and whatnot? And I feel like a lot of the onus in that regard was kind of on me, because I was sort of a new founder of a business and things. And I was like, oh, where do I take this business? Where do I go after here? And me just trying to answer that question. And answer a question that I've had since I was in high school, where what do I do with Tribe Games? Is Tribe Games my portfolio, basically, where I take Tribe Games and be like, hey, X Studio, here's my body of work. Here you go. Or do I use said body of work and then build out a studio? And things like that. And then I was trying to answer that question for myself. And which would ultimately lead to whether or not I would be part of like a co-owner of Glitch or not.
I distinctly remember the moments in which you just we were talking and we were just asking each other questions, and that seemed to be one of the biggest like just one of the biggest questions for you was like,
Hmm.
do I want to go AAA? Like, is
Hmm.
this the thing that I want to do? And then use this to have it be like my body of work for a AAA space. Do I still want to work with other studios in some way? Do I move forward with Tribe Games on my own,
Hmm.
and try to make Tribe Games my full-time thing?
Yeah.
That was a big gray area. And
Yeah.
I think for me, from my perspective, I had two ways in which it was going to go.
Hmm.
Um, and it was either we're going to fund games and continue to fund games in a very different way. Um, because of what we learned with publishing on Hyperdot.
Yeah.
Um, but it's either that or it was starting a studio. And I don't think I would have started or considered starting a studio, I guess, like without you,
Hmm.
because I enjoy working with you, and between like design and the types of things that we do collaborate together, like it makes sense.
Yeah.
um, but then that's like two separate directions for the studio and for the
Exactly.
company. I guess like at that time, what were you thinking? Like, what were you thinking in general?
It wasn't necessarily like I felt like, oh man, I feel all this pressure because like I need to answer this question. Because yeah, there was some type of pressure in order to answer the question. It was really more like me trying to like figure out what exactly it was that I wanted out of all these things, and whether or not I felt like I was ready to do
Mm-hmm.
some of these things. The biggest one being like doing Tribe Games full time,
Yeah.
and being like, yes, this is going to be all I do for the foreseeable future. And am I ready to do that? And at the time, I felt like if I like had to, and it was like I have to do this right now, I feel like I could probably like stumble my way through it,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't feel the most confident. I definitely didn't feel super confident in terms of like, oh yeah, I'm totally able to like build a studio, have my own team, be able to do all this stuff, delegate all these things. Like I felt like I needed more experience, but of course that is me. Like just that's kind of just my personality of being like, okay, I want to be prepared, and like I want to know how all of these things are gonna lay out and have some type of idea of things. Which is also kind of why I like doing a whole bunch of different types of things, just so I have like some type of understanding, so that I
Mm-hmm.
can talk to people about like production or art or music or programming and stuff. But that was one thing where I don't or I didn't know whether or not I felt like I was ready to
Mm-hmm.
make that leap to be like, yeah, I'll totally be a co-owner, or I'll work on Tribe Games myself, or
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And that gray area, that area of like, oh, what will I do, or will I actually be a co-owner, or will I work on my own stuff? I feel like yeah, that totally added to like a lot of the tension. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it also, also the world was going on, so it was like hard to figure out what exactly made the most sense to move forward with,
Mm-hmm.
because as those questions were being asked, then yeah, the world happened, COVID, just like so many things happened,
Yeah.
which made the future really really fuzzy. I had very little idea in which like what I should do slash what I could do, and it felt like uh, I needed to figure that out sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Largely because it also has been, like I said, I had this fundamental question since I was in high school,
Yeah.
of like, what do I do with Tribe Games?
Yeah.
So I feel like I kept on moving that question, like, oh yeah, I'll try and figure it out later, uh, so on and so forth, until like it felt a little bit like I was procrastinating on the question, just trying to figure out what exactly it meant.
And I think that from my perspective, I think again, looking back on it, I, for some reason, felt hurt
Mm-hmm.
by that indecision. The way that I explained it to myself was like, I feel like I'm being strung along or like a rejected partner or something of sorts, like in a dating scenario where I'm like, I want to date you, but I can't tell what's going on here, but you're like kind of calling me, and you know, like, and again, I knew, right? Like I understood where you were at, and yet I still felt the things that I did. And it sucks. But at the same time, you know, like we both had to just go through it and feel how we were feeling. And
we also, like, now, literally at this moment, we have the benefit of knowing what happened. So when we look back, we're like, oh, well, no, duh, you should have done this. We have the knowledge of what to do. But like at the time, especially at the time when everything was going on in the world, in addition to this, of like, oh, what is your next big step gonna be? It was hard to figure out because you were also making a big step of like, okay, what do we do? These are two paths that we're trying to pick. Which path can I go down? And like one of those paths really did like require me to answer that question. And then so I totally understand where you were coming from. It was like, oh man, I feel like I'm being strung along.
Like it was a real feeling, but I knew that it wasn't like malicious or anything. It's just, it was like a response to how you were feeling, and it just, that's how I felt at the time. So like no bad feelings. It just was, and it just happened. So that's the gray area. Those were the two big ones.
Largely the things that I personally learned from having all those summer session things and talking through this was, one, it's really nice to be able to talk through this and have enough like respect and courtesy to be able to go through that at your own pace and stuff. So that was like something that I did learn. It's not always going to go according to plan. Sometimes there's going to be a random Xbox that shows up.
A very lovely group of Xbox people that show up.
That's like, or just trying to figure out like some like indecisions and things like that are just going to happen because you're just trying to figure things out. Like all of that it's going to happen, but it's good to work through those things together and try and reach something where we're on the same page, we're communicating and figuring out what the heck's going on.
And I think that we were really lucky that we both came in on this and said like, this is a living agreement and we will figure it out. And we did have the mutual respect and trust, and clearly very similar in terms of like communication styles, that helped bind us together and helped, you know, both of us come together versus pulling apart. And I think that if there's anything that you know, you take home from this, or you take away from this, is that like, get into relationships or partnerships in which you can have these really honest conversations, because it's definitely going to get hard. Even the best partnerships, like we've known each other for so long, but even the best partnerships, there's going to be rocky times, and you're going to have to be able to figure out how to communicate through that, figure out how to continue to choose each other, and continue to choose your partnership. And all agreements are living, so aim for that. Talk to people about it. Go back and visit them more regularly than we did. Maybe more than, you know, once every 2 years.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
And with that, that's a wrap for this episode. So you can continue the conversation with us over on Discord at discord.gg/heyglitch. And don't forget that you can subscribe to Hello Player on your favorite podcast app. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And Hello Player is produced by me, Ava Carr, Holly Harrison, Alana Smith, Ben Hansen of MinMax, and music done by none other than Charles McGregor. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next time.
Small thing that could have been was Windows Phone. Should have put it on the Windows Phone. But not in the cards because now the Windows Phone is dead. But